India's League of Action Heroes. Over the last 2 years, since the pandemic struck, we thought, how can we make the online space a little more engaging and a little more informative for our audience? Because after all, Hoopsters is a website and we are an online platform for children. Since the on-ground part of it came to a standstill with the pandemic, we had to still continue the interaction and continue educating our children, parents, and teachers. So what we thought of was to do a host of webinars with some interesting people who could speak to us about a range of subjects, starting from child development, mental health, parenting, and education during the pandemic and post-pandemic, how things are going to change and how this can affect the career of our children. In this whole journey, we have come across a lot of interesting people, and one such person is retired Lieutenant Colonel Rohit Mishra, who is the founder and director of Mission Fight Back, a very, very interesting initiative that we will talk about in this interview. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Nupur.
Thank you so much for being a part of this today. And I think what you're doing is really incredible. We read about it a lot, in newspapers, on Facebook, on social media, but to see somebody who's actually going ahead and doing something like this is really, really amazing for us. So tell us, sir, before we actually get into the subject and talk about Mission Fight Back, what I really want to understand is, why did you agree to do this interview today?
There's some problem with the audio. You said, why did I agree to do something like Mission Fight Back? Is that correct?
No, why did you agree to do this interview with us today?
Oh, okay, interview with you. And why not? You guys are doing a fantastic job. When I met Mr. Bala, when we started speaking with him, thanks to a common friend that we had. And when I came to know the initiative that both you, father and daughter, have undertaken, because Mission Fight Back also started as a father and daughter initiative, I had no option but to say yes. And you guys are doing such a fantastic yeoman service. I mean, getting all the children together, you're talking about parenting, you're talking about children. There is so much of life skills which you guys are talking about, especially during this pandemic year when, the children are doing nothing, they're behind closed doors. What better way to impart education or to create an awareness than the way Hoopsters is doing through your League of Action Heroes?
Thank you so much. And it's really nice to see that there are so many father-daughter initiatives out there which are actually, working towards bettering the lives of children. So let's start talking about Mission Fight Back. What pushed you to start this initiative?
Nupur, like I made a mention, this was a father-daughter initiative when I with the army about 5 years back now. I also thought that I'll probably hit the CV street after the army, like any other person. But then probably fate had some other decision for me, all set and ready. So Vedika, my daughter, she had started speaking about an initiative like this when she was 9 years old. After she saw the Nirbhaya incident, she and her friends had started a conversation about this. And very often I've made a mention that how I went to her school and trained her school for 2 days. And that is the time when I realized that something like this was needed. But then, of course, I forgot all about it. We in India, we have very short-lived memories. Everybody forgot Nirbhaya. Till the time that I shifted to my own hometown and my own daughter had to undergo something similar. She had to undergo harassment when she was just in her 8th or 9th standard in the hands of one of the seniors in school, who really harassed her for nearly about a year and a half. And like any other misinformed parent who think that they know everything about the child, I kept thinking that everything's hunky-dory. So yeah, fathers normally work on their daughter's dreams. I worked on my daughter's nightmare and started Mission Fight Back.
That is incredible. So before we get into the actuals of Mission Fight Back, so how did you come to know that your daughter is going through harassment? Because this is a subject that children often do not talk to their parents about, or rather these conversations do not exist in our households, right? So tell us how this conversation started between you and your child.
Okay, you're very right, Nupur. Children do not talk about it. And when this incident happened the first time, there was the teacher who gave me a call. She was in a different school. She was in an army school. And a teacher gave me a call and he said, he knew me from before. And I was also having an official appointment after retirement in the Uttarakhand government. So he knew me since then. And he gave me a call and he told me that there is this boy who's harassing your daughter. And, he has a certain reputation in school. And he's been a failure in school, and the school is totally fed up of him. But there's nothing the school can do. Being an army school, it has its own rules and regulations. So I did what every father would do. I did not try to investigate into the matter. I just changed her school, not realizing that this man or boy could also change his school. And then followed my daughter after about a month into the new school. So we have a family where we have taught our kids, both my daughter and son, to speak up. We sit and talk to them about all subjects, including subjects which are taboos in India. We sit down, we chat, we discuss everything under the sun. In spite of having this kind of a relationship with my children, the biggest problem that happens is these kind of perpetrators, they actually put, their praise at risk. They put a kind of a fear in the mind. Like in my daughter's case, the fear put in her mind was, if she does not comply to be his girlfriend, then he will go and harm my son who was in his 4th standard. He would get knives to school. He even got a pistol to school. I do not know if it was a real pistol or not, but he did get that. He would get those knuckles. And my daughter would not want to go to school. She would say that she'd have a stomach ache, she'll have some other problem, but typical Indian for us, education is everything. We thought that the child is probably making up stories. We never really tried to get into the problem. And we would send her back to the school. And you can well imagine what the child would have gone through, the complete harrowing experience where the father and mother themselves are picking up the child and taking her to the most, unsafe place for her, which was school at that point of time. So it's only much later, nearly after about a year, by the time I came to know, because this man cut my daughter's hand with a knife to write his name. He wrote an A here, and then in the evening she gave me a call. And by this time, about a year had already taken place, and she gave a call and she said, "Dad, I cannot take this anymore." I said, "Take what anymore?" And she said, "Just come home." And I just come back from a business trip, and she said, "Dad, just come over." And I sat down with her. She told me and what all she's gone through, and the rest is history.
So you are from the army, people from the army are feared. Like, we look at them as, okay, these guys can really, take my case if I mess with their family or something that they're close to. And still people have, I don't know what to call it, the audacity, the guts to harass somebody from this kind of a background.
See, yes, you're right. People from the army are feared, because we have a certain training that comes along with it. However, also remember that we are true Indian parents. For us, our ladki is our paraya dhan, which means, my daughter is a liability the day she's born. The moment she gets married, it's like my liability is gone. Now, whatever happens to her, if she gets beaten up and she comes back to my house, and I'm going to say, sweetheart, it's okay. You have to manage. After all, now you're married to that man. So we've always taken our daughters as a liability. And these perpetrators understand, our psyche and our way of thinking. Maybe this is what this man or this boy had thought, but he did not know me probably by then, because by the time I came to know about this thing, I made life miserable for him. I sent him to the juvenile. The police in Uttar Pradesh would not do anything. I carried out the investigation myself. I caught this boy. I caught all evidences against this boy. The school that my daughter was in was DPS, and the principal of the school just refused to help us out. Initially, the school gave us all the evidence. By the time they got in touch with the lawyer, they must have realized they had made a mistake. So they started denying everything. I still have all the evidences and everything with me. And then the school started helping the boy more than my daughter. This boy was sent to juvenile. He stayed in juvenile for 14 days. When he came back, this boy was again allowed to enter the school. And when my daughter saw this boy again, she ran to the principal to say, "Ma'am, I need to speak to my father, because that's what my father has said. The moment you see this boy, call me up again." The principal refused to meet her. The doors were shut. My daughter had to, speak to one of the teacher, take the mobile phone, and then give me a call. By the time I reached the school made sure that this boy had escaped. So the school, in order to cover up their own mistakes, started helping this boy rather than, my daughter.
Right.
And then look at the harrowing experience that the first year I had to move her from an army school then to a DPS, and then I had to move her to a third school.
Mm.
3 schools changed in 3 years.
Mm.
The third school where I went, of course, I spoke to the principal, told her the entire thing, and she was very, very helpful. And subsequently, this boy followed my daughter again, threatening acid attack on her. And then he left a note, and then he ran away, wrote a suicide note, like a huge thing. And then finally, the police also said nothing. In fact, the case turned against me, because they said, oh, this boy has run away from home and he's written a suicide note. So I got in touch with one of his friend's friend, and I somehow managed to call him over to, a particular restaurant which was a hangout for these boys. And that is where probably my army training came into play. There were 16 boys, me with another friend of mine, Gaurav. Both of us landed there. Before this boy could say, Jack Robinson had caught him by his collar. And suddenly there were 15 boys standing against the 2 of us, with this guy's throat being held by me like this. So, like typical Salman Khan dialogue, I also said the same thing. I said, okay, I'm going to take 3 to 4 boys down myself. My friend Gaurav is going to take another 2 or 3. So total 6 or 7 boys are going to go down along with this guy. Now make up your mind who wants to come in. Nobody came in to help this boy. We called the police came, and the police took him. It's only after all these things happened, that is the time when I realized that me, with the kind of training that I'd had for 22 years, me with the kind of political connections or the connections in the police that I had, or, the kind of awareness that I had, still, if my daughter could undergo something like this, and it was at that point of time that since I had decided my daughter's life, so I knew that I'd go the whole hog to make sure that she's safe. How many fathers would think that? A lot of times, like when Mission Fight Back actually started, I went to Surat, where the director of the school, before I could start speaking to the girls, he said, Surat is a very safe place. Nothing much happens here. Whereas the girls, when I asked the girls in interactive session, and the girls, they got up and they said, sir, it's very unsafe. The only reason why people think it's safe is because we do not go back. Because even if we go and report back to our parents are going to say, oh, just ignore it. Just put your head down and just walk. So they say we have to undergo all these cat calls, all these whistles, all these lewd comments while we move from our home to our tuition. They say we have to endure it. And now it's become a way of life that, in India, every father, every mother, the first thing they'll tell the girl is learn to endure, learn to sacrifice, learn to endure. And if that is the kind of backup system that we're telling that girl that she has, which child will ever want to come and speak up to the parents? There have been cases where girls have told me, oh, it's a certain uncle who's harassing her. The moment they go and try talking to the parents, is the first thing, even the mother will always ask, oh, there must be something that you must have done. The father, the first thing he wants to know is, what dress were you wearing? I hope you did not provoke him with a certain dress that you were wearing. If that is the kind of psyche or mentality of us Indian parents, which child will ever want to come and talk to the parents? Nupur.
So tell us, how did Mission Fight Back start? Tell us about your beginning, like maybe your first ever group or your first ever session. How did it happen?
Okay, so Mission Fight Back as an idea had started cropping in my mind, and I really wanted to do something, and we weren't sure whether we wanted to do an NGO, we wanted to do something like that. It was just an idea. And then there is a very dear friend of mine, Mr. Jaspal Rana, this sportsperson who is the coach of the Indian shooting team. He's a dear friend of mine. And I discussed this particular idea with him, and he got me introduced to Mr. Raj Khatri. Mr. Raj Khatri and me, currently we run Mission Fight Back along with Amitabh Chandra. So me and Raj, we just met over a cup of tea, and we started discussing ideas. And I was too reluctant to discuss Mission Fight Back with him, so I started discussing other business ideas with him. And it's in the end that he says, Bhaiya, what is it that you do? I said, I have this vague idea of something called Mission Fight Back on my mind, and this is how I want to take it ahead. Next morning, he came home at 7 o'clock. He says, forget about the rest of the thing, we're doing Mission Fight Back. That's how Mission Fight Back started. So Raj was actually the driving force behind Mission Fight Back, because I had tried to do Mission Fight Back on my own. I had tried and I had failed. I tried really hard. I tried speaking to the government. I tried speaking to the bureaucrats, a few schools. So Raj came in, and Raj made a small movie. Raj is from Bollywood, the known personality there. And he made a small movie, a 3-minute, 4-minute movie, wherein we actually trained about 20 girls from the slums of Gurgaon. So it is, so this was a complete idea. However, when we started training these girls, the first set of girls that we trained in Gurgaon, that is the time we realized that these girls were more than willing to, learn what we had to teach them, because what we were teaching them was something very, very new to them. It was a novel idea. They did not know anything about it. And when they realized that we are not into physical fitness, we are into something different, and how it actually empowers them. More than empowerment, it's the confidence that comes into them. So a 1-hour training session would become 2 hours. After 2 hours, they say, teach us more, teach us more. So that enthusiasm to learn was, it was like contagious. And then, of course, the first set of school that we trained was the Jaipuria school in Lucknow. And we trained 10 girls from there. And again, so after that, we never looked back.
So, tell us, what exactly is Mission Fight Back? What happens in your training program, or in that 1 hour that you spend with these girls?
Okay, so Mission Fight Back, Nupur, happens to be, as of today, one of the most unique and holistic concept in the whole world. And none other than, the luxury brand Gucci has called us that. Marianne Pearl, who heads this particular Chime for Change Foundation, looks after the Chime for Change Foundation, is headed by, a few Hollywood stars, including Gucci and Beyonce. They called us up and they featured us, and they said this concept was mind-boggling. And that actually gave us a fillip. And they said, we had started using the word holistic. So what we wanted to do with Mission Fight Back was not just some kind of a self-defense training. We wanted to get into an arena where nobody had been before, which is called street survival. So we did not want to do any kind of a self-defense thing. We went into street survival, but then we realized that street survival, training children in street survival tactics would also mean that we need to train their minds. We need to have this mind here decluttered. Because every child that I've been meeting has some psychological, I can't say every, but yes, out of 10, I'm sure there would be 7 to 8 children who have some psychological issue or some problem going on with them most of the time. It could be a big psychological issue, a big problem, or it could be a small one. Even your exam fever is a psychological problem. So we realized that what good is my training in case when we are training the children, but there is something cluttered in the mind here. So what we started doing was we introduced something known as a psychometric analysis test to actually understand the mind of the child before training the child. So what Mission Fight Back today does in its entire holistic concept is that we go from schools to schools and we train the children for 14 days. So before the 14 days, it starts with a workshop, which is conducted by me. In this workshop, we try to put the children at ease by telling them that, see, we are here not to get into some kind of a physical fitness for you. This is going to be all fun and games, and I'm going to get to know you, and you guys are going to get to know me. And by the end of it, you're going to be a different person altogether. So it's a workshop that I do. Once the workshop is done, and we get into an MOU with the school. We have 4 levels of Mission Fight Back. Each level is of 14 days each. In each level, we train the children for about 1 hour each day on a training, which we now call FIST, F-I-S-T, which stands for Fast Intensive Street Survival Training. Now, what happens in this street survival training is that we teach them techniques to fight. We are not into breaking tiles. We're not into any kind of a belt system. We're not into making them first dan, third dan, and so on and so forth. We are into giving them practical training wherein any girl, any age, any shape, any size can fight her way through a situation from a certain point of attack, make good her escape in less than 5 seconds, and shout for help. In this process of 5 seconds, she has to shock her perpetrator by certain very basic moves, which can actually put this person down, or maybe even break a limb or two, or at least give him certain kind of a pain before he realizes that something like this has happened. The girl, in case if she's in a closed room, she can unlatch, she can run, or she can shout for help. So this is it. And then it also puts a certain fear into the mind of the perpetrator, who was, before being shocked, was coming at her with a certain degree of confidence because of his body size or because of his intent or, sheer muscle power. Suddenly when something like this happens, he's in shock. So this 14-day is, so the first level of 14-day, what we do is we build certain confidence in the girl regarding her own body. A girl has to be confident about her body before she starts fighting. And like I said, every girl gets confident. It's us, or as parents, or as you call it, peer pressure, that the girls start losing confidence. Not just girls, even boys. But since we're talking about girls here, they start losing confidence in themselves. This is called body shaming. Or I'm a certain height, I cannot do this. I'm a little too chubby. I'm a little on the heavier side. As parents, we put this thing, oh, you need to reduce, you need to do this, you need to be absolutely, slim and this and that. So again, as parents, we're thinking only probably marriage or probably a certain look, or, as peer pressure, it's like you don't want to be laughed at. So when I go to school, all these girls, you always find that some of the fittest girls are always standing right and get these girls from the back to the front.
Right.
And not by saying, okay, you come so confident about their bodies. So the first level is all about them getting confident about their bodies, and the first level is all about fighting one person at a time. Second level is, of course, taking this thing forward, and then we introduce weapons. Third is all about weapons. Fourth is all about assessment and improvisation of a fight. So these are the 4 levels that we do. While we are doing this, the first level, any other level, we have a series of psychometric analysis tests, and we start, let's say, from a certain first of a particular month, we start the training. So it's going to be a 14-day training, which means a 14-hour training, excluding the Saturdays and Sundays. Right. While all this is happening, we have a dedicated team of psychologists that comes down to the school. They carry out a few online and offline tests based on the data that they collate and analyze. They actually get a complete history sheet of every child.
Okay.
Once they have an entire history sheet, we announce to the school that we have our counselors who come and who would like to talk to you. If you like to talk to them, please go and meet them. And you'll be surprised, we have had 100% result where everybody wants to come and talk to our counselors. And you'll be surprised that children do not want. The children always feel that, if I go and talk to a school counselor, tomorrow my secrets would be out. But when we go there, we have people who are coming there for 14 days.
Right.
And please know this, that every child wants to let things out of the heart. It's part of the self-defense mechanism to speak. We suppress it is another story, but children have to speak. That's part of the self-defense inherent mechanism. So all the children, they come and talk to us. So let's say we have a particular girl who comes and talks to us. We already have her entire data collated. So we know what is she going to talk about. We just want her to tell us her story. And it's not necessary that it has to be looking for any sexual problem or sexual exploitation that's taken place. We're looking for any trigger points.
Right.
Anxiety, depression. Why is the child undergoing depression? It could be because of exams. It could be because of what a father said or a mother said, so on and so forth. So once we get these, and within these 14 days, we try to get her out of this thing, because now we've identified the problem, and after having identified the problem, we need to now get it out of her system. So when she knows that she's working on her body, gaining that body confidence, and at the same time her mind is getting decluttered, that is the time when you actually have a child who is very, very confident. You give me a girl today, you meet the same girl on the 15th day, it'll be a 180-degree change.
Right.
And then, of course, we have cybersecurity workshops that we do. So to train them, because every child is on, especially during the pandemic, on pads and laptops and phones and whatnots. So we have to educate them to use it in a very responsible manner. And the fourth, of course, which we do is an app that we've made, but that's a long story because we do not do apps with the school. But these are the three main things that happen, which keeps changing. The training keeps changing, the tests keep changing, the follow-up of the psychometric analysis test keeps happening at this thing. So by the time we come to the school, the next time for the second level, we are looking at what has happened to have these problems changed. Has anything new added on? And believe you me, a small problem that gets changed now goes a long way in helping the girl in the future.
So, Sam, can you tell us about some case studies? Like you said, it's very interesting that you said that every child at some level or the other has some psychological issue bothering them. It could be something to do with, like you said, exam fever. It could be body confidence. It could be actual sexual abuse. There's so many issues that children, face these days. So can you tell us some really interesting case studies or stories that you have come across?
Yeah, there are plenty of stories I can tell you about, but there's one story which I tell everybody very often because this is a very simple story.
Right.
And this story I tell very often is basically because I want parents to listen to this and understand the degree of irresponsibility that they have when they speak to their children. So there was this girl that we were training in a particular school, and she was basically an introvert, standing in the back of the line, and she was a little taller than the rest of the girls in the class. A smart-looking girl. She would not look up. She would never look in the eye. She would not look up, and her actions were very, very clumsy. And by the time we met her, she was in her 5th standard. So during one of the training sessions, I saw this girl. So I used to be going around the training sessions, and I saw my trainers training these girls. So I saw this girl, and I just told my instructor, "Why don't you get this girl up in the front?" So before my instructor could actually tell the girl to come out in the front, and remember, she's a 5th standard girl. One of the teachers jumped in, who was supervising training, standing there and watching us, and she said, "Colonel, we'll just leave this child. This child doesn't really talk much." And I said, why not? So I said, nobody tried talking to her? And they said, no, we've tried everything. She used to be an okay child and something happened. Or I do not know what happened. She suddenly became an introvert and things like that. So they were very, they weren't too sure what had happened to the child or why she had suddenly become like that. I think there's a dog barking there.
We have 4 dogs at home right now, so just give me a second. I'm going to just get it. Sorry about that.
No, it's absolutely fine. Absolutely
Yeah,
fine. So coming back to what you wanted to know as a case study. So long and short of it was one of my psychologists, Ashima, was there, and she said she'll look into it. Less than an hour or so, she came running back to me and she said, we found out the problem with the girl. And the problem was very simple. When this girl was in her 3rd standard, since she was in a boarding school, gone back home during the midterm, where she found her parents were constantly arguing with each other, fighting with each other. And this girl just come back for like a 10-day holiday, and she sees her parents fight all the time. And kids these days are very small. So she just asks her mother, why is it that you and dad keep fighting so much? And so the mother just turned around and said, well, you should know, it started the day you were born. And mind you, this is a boarding school. This is not a community which is from the lower strata. This is a community which is affluent, which is right on top. And the mother just said this, and that's the end of conversation. Now, the mother made a very responsible statement, maybe in a fit of rage. But the child carried this, a child who was an extrovert, suddenly realized that it is because of her that, the parents were fighting. And maybe she could become, she did not understand divorce and things like that, but she started having this guilt in her. So she came back to school, she stopped talking to everybody else. And slowly and steadily, you know, from third standard, she went to the fourth standard, the teachers tried and she stopped talking. After some time, the teachers lost interest. By the time we met her, it was the fifth standard. Now, what if we had not met this girl? There are two scenarios. We met this girl. The simplest thing that we did was, once we knew that this is what the mother had said, we contacted the mother. The mother flew down. We counseled the mother, and the mother and daughter met together. And the mother said, sweetheart, we had nothing. I mean, I'm sorry for what I said. The mother didn't even remember that she had made a statement. That's the beauty of it. So mother obviously tried to tell us, no, maybe she concocted, she overthought or things like that. However, we said, ma'am, it's okay. Even if she overthought, even if it is a lie, whatever, we are not getting into the personal space of yours. However, the child felt this. Go talk to her, give her a hug, and tell her that you didn't mean it and you're sorry, and things between your husband and you are fine. That's exactly what the mother did. Meet this child today. She's back to being an extrovert. She's right in front of the class. And the principal told me, Colonel, your team has done a miracle. We didn't do any miracles. We just listened to the child. We heard a problem. Now the same scenario, Nupur, you tell me what would have happened to the child had she carried on like this without an intervention from any group like mine. What do you think would have happened?
The only thing that she probably would have a lot of confidence issues.
Absolutely.
She probably going ahead in life have issues with trust, you know, like when somebody so close to you says something like that, it has a big impact on your relationships that you carry forward. More
than Nupur, the trust issues that happens here, in this case, the problem that would happen is she would always try to please the other person.
Right.
Because she will always have this guilt in her. So these are the kind of relationships where, unfortunately, in case if the girl gets into a situation where the husband is a little violent, she will take the beating and she'll still hold herself responsible. So even if she has to undergo a case of domestic violence, she will never hold her husband responsible. Like it happens in many other cases. She will always hold herself responsible.
Right.
Oh, मैंने कुछ गलत किया होगा, that is the reason. And she would still try to go out of her way to please the other person or to make the other person, love her back. Because she does not have the confidence, because she says, oh, you see, this is what happened to my parents. It happened because of me. Now, I don't, so she will want to hold on to her relationship with both her hands like this, even if it is a toxic relationship.
Nice.
And with this, with each passing year, like you very correctly mentioned, lack of confidence, then you start losing interest in your studies. So one irresponsible statement made by the parent. And then just yesterday, I was talking to a few parents here, and one of the child got up and he says, my grandmother calls me a mistake. And the grandmother was sitting there. The grandmother just did not know what to say. She never really thought that the child would actually stand up and say something like this. And this is yesterday. And here is a boy who's a teenager. So it's not a girl that I'm talking about. Here is a boy who's a teenager, but he's carrying this thing in his mind and he's become aggressive. He started having anger issues because he started, because every time he gets into this argument with his grandparents who stay in a separate house, is that, you are a mistake. You shouldn't have been born. Very irresponsible of the grandparents to say something like that. But unfortunately, we in India say things like that. Yeah. Not realizing, what effect it has on the child for the future. So there are million such cases, and so we try to make sure that we put a kind of an awareness into the parents as part of Action Fight Back. So that's the point I had forgotten. We try to talk to the parents. We try to talk to the boys. We teach the boys to start respecting women, irrespective of how they see women being treated in their house. Like especially in the North India, it's a very patriarchal society. Right. Women are treated in a certain manner. They are spoken about in a certain manner. Right? And of course, women in those families also, to survive, help patriarchy. So we have to get these mindsets out. We have to tell them, okay, see, this is the way you're supposed to respect people. This is the way you're supposed to respect women. So these are the kind of things that happens in mission.
So when we speak about sexual abuse or a lot of psychological issues also. See, we live in a society where, like you said, the girl is considered pariah, or one day she'll go away, or she's very, very rightly said, a liability. Thankfully, it's changing a lot, but that still is true. Okay, but what about the boys who undergo similar issues? Sexual abuse is rampant amongst men as well. So, does Mission Fight Back also cater to this segment?
Absolutely. Initially, Mission Fight Back started only for girls, but then we went to this school called Pathways, where one of the principal of the middle school, she says, Colonel, I will undertake this training only in case you train the boys. And me and my team were initially a little reluctant because we said, okay, if you train the boys, the same training that we're giving to the girls, it's like the venom and the antidote together. So we're reluctant, and then we sat down with a few, police officers. We wanted to know about how are boys treated. Then came the next revelation, and the next revelation was that out of 10, if 10 boys, out of 10 boys, 10 boys are harassed sexually, none of them will speak up. But out of 10, in case if there are 10 girls who are harassed, at least 3 or 4 will come out and speak about it. So the harassment amongst boys is a very, very big issue. Be it, and I'm not just talking bullying, I'm talking sexual harassment.
Right.
It is a very big thing. It happens in schools, and this starts with bullying, and then it turns sexual. And a lot of perpetrators actually feel that harassing the boys is easier than harassing the girls because the boy will never open his mouth. Right. So then, of course, yes, we started training the boys as well. There are a few schools, including one of the school down south in Andhra that we've trained, where we train the boys as well. We decided to ensure that the training is a little different from the girls. So with the girls, we were more towards the sexual part of it. Boys, it came towards bullying and protecting themselves.
Right.
So yes, we do train boys now.
So why do you feel so strongly about the curriculum including something like this? Clearly, you've spoken about it, but where do you think the extracurriculars, the co-curriculums can improve to change the situation as a whole?
See, the schools need to understand a few things, right? The Olympics are happening, right? The medals that we are winning have contribution from the school side. However, every school teacher, every principal, every PT instructor, every games teacher would be sitting in front of the television and shouting at these guys to, the Indian hockey girls hockey team, which did fantastically well in the morning. They would all be shouting for goal, this and that. But what is their contribution when they were in school? When I was in school, I picked up no games in school. Right? Because games period for us meant, one odd period during this thing, or maybe if the teacher is absent, that is the time when the children play games.
Right.
So in India, we pay no attention towards any kind of a sports activity, any kind of a physical activity. Whereas when you go abroad, you will find that you have to have a particular this thing in sports. They have their own gymnasiums. They have their coaches who are taken very seriously. So every school takes a particular sport and they excel it. And it gets very competitive for them. In India, of course, it has started off late because parents want that particular thing. What we do not understand is that these are inherent part of education. Now, why do I, after the rape case happened in December 2012, the Delhi High Court actually passed an order saying that children need to be trained. The government even went over and announced a 5,000 crore corpus fund called the Nirbhaya Fund. Please make a check of where the Nirbhaya Fund was used. It was basically meant to come up with certain ideas which can actually act as a deterrent to rapes and molestation that took place.
Hmm.
I was just checking out this thing with my team. Most of the years, most of the states had asked nothing from the Nirbhaya Fund. So, even states like Andhra, even states like Assam, even states like UP had asked zero money from Nirbhaya Fund. Then when they got on the rap on the knuckle again after 3 years, then everybody started asking for 200 crore, 300 crore, things like that. Right? In spite of a fund being available with the government, then there is something known as Samagra Shiksha, which is part of the HRD ministry. Now, the HRD ministry in its letter has told most schools that self-defense should be part of the curriculum. But the execution is in such a half-hearted manner that to train one school, they pay 3,000 rupees per month. So if there are, which instructor of a particular martial art will come down for 3,000 rupees to train children? Unrealistic. Then there are no follow-ups, whether the training is actually happening on ground or not. What the private schools have done is, because the private schools also have to give a certain answers, what they do is they have now taekwondo, they have probably karate, or they have such like martial art, which is a good thing. But schools need to understand all these taekwondos and karates and kung fus, they are all now classified as sports. If they're classified as sports, that means there are rules, there are restrictions, right? You cannot do this, you cannot do this. Plus, when they teach in school, they're very, very careful. What is it that they're teaching the students? What if the two students start fighting with each other? What if one of them ends up getting hurt? If one of them ends up getting hurt, the entire brigade of parents will come down on the school. This chap might actually end up losing his job. So everybody knows that there is a problem, but there is a half-hearted attempt. The school thinks, oh, they're doing taekwondo. But you tell me, taekwondo actually means that you have to be able to kick well, right? What if the attack is happening when you're wearing a sari? How do you kick? Right? Your body has a few points which you should know, which are vulnerable to, even if there is a small touch to it, you feel a certain pain. No taekwondo teacher or karate teacher is ever going to teach you that, because for him, it is a job and he does not want to hurt the students. Right? Because he is only thinking about his job. He is only thinking about getting his salary at the end of the day, things like that. People need to think that self-defense, using sports for self-defense, is the worst thing that you can do. You actually have to teach these children how to survive on the streets with practical knowledge being imparted to them.
Very important. I think right now, like when I have done a little bit of taekwondo, so it is a very controlled environment. It's great for your fitness. It's great as a sport. It also gives you a lot of confidence. No doubt about that. But in a practical situation, I think we need to really know the quick response that we need to do.
Okay, now let me ask you something, Nupur. You said you've done taekwondo.
Very good.
Sorry?
Maybe a year or year and a half.
Yeah, whatever. But you've done a little bit, right? What if I were to attack you and just hold you by your hair at the back? What would your reaction be? Let's talk practical things. What would you do?
If somebody held me by my hair, using what I've learned in taekwondo, maybe a kickback is what I would do first. But in a practical situation, I think I would use my arms to push back, right? That's what I would think of doing.
Okay. Just try doing that today. Just ask anybody.
Hold my hair.
Yeah, hold your hair. Seriously, ask somebody to hold your hair and try kicking in the back. The moment you try kicking in the back, if you're lucky, if it gets connected, remember somebody is holding by your hair. The moment you kick the person, supposing it was me who was holding your hair, the moment you hit me, your hair also gets pulled.
Right.
Right? You try to hit me like this, and I am at a certain distance from you.
I want to
it does not connect.
Right.
please remember, all these predators actually want also, besides sexual, this thing, they're also looking at that feeling of feeling powerful. Like a bully. A bully bullies you not for anything else, because he wants to feel powerful. When he puts somebody in, when he puts somebody down, when he harasses somebody, even if that means it's a tongue lashing, he feels powerful, because he knows I can say something to her or him and nothing can come back to me. So it makes me feel powerful. So when I hold you by your hair and you try to hit me back and you're unable to hit me, it's making me powerful every second. It's giving me that sense of power. No, see, I will hold you that much more harder. I'll put you down. Right? That is.
So what? Now that you said I'm scared, what should I do?
Okay. So I wish I could have shown it to you right now. But remember, the moment somebody pulls your hair, what is the first thing that you feel?
Your head getting doubled up.
No, you feel pain.
Okay, pain. Right. Absolutely.
The first thing you have to do, see, if you're feeling pain, then you're not thinking straight. All your kicking back and you're trying to jab him with your elbow is all part of that desperate need to get out of that situation.
Right.
Where, because me pulling your hair, but just if somebody was pulling your hair, just grab his hand here and just press, press his hand with both your hands down. So if I've grabbed somebody by the hair here and this comes here, see, you feel no pain.
Oh, okay.
Because he's pulling it. What you've done is you've arrested that pull.
Okay.
This is happening in less than a second.
Right.
Then I have restriction of space. Otherwise, I would have told you it's so simple how to turn around. Then even if you have to hit him with your leg, because initially you are facing in the same direction that where he is facing. Now suddenly by doing this and turning around, you're facing him. The probability of you hitting him correctly with your leg now is 100%.
Right.
And he never anticipated that he'll suddenly turn in a very swift manner, not feeling the pain. And when you turn around, believe you, he's the one who's feeling the pain because it's his hand that gets twisted down. This is the practicality of street fight. Like I said, I wish I could have shown this thing to you, but maybe I'll make a small video, at least this portion I sent to you, then you realize how simple it is to get out of a sticky situation.
Right.
When we do martial art, our mind is basically on kicks and jabbing and hitting. And I'm telling you, when you fight, you don't need to really get into any of this. Never punch. You break your knuckle. Right? Use this. Somebody comes and grabs you, just do this. The fight is over. Whether he gets it here, whether he gets it here, the fight's over.
Right.
Right? So this is the practicality of street fight that comes in. Irrespective, again, of your age and height, size and shape, or the dress you're wearing. I will not want to train girls in, the white kurta and pajama or whatever they wear. No yoga pants, no jeans. Please come me in what you wear and I'll teach you how to fight. So schools need to understand that they have to train these girls or these young boys even, to also be ready. See, schools, what do schools do? They make sure they make you education ready to face the world. But are you actually, besides the education ready, are you also giving them the confidence ready to face the world? So today I know, if I know, if I'm a girl and today I know that I've been trained, and tomorrow even if I have to go get myself a job, or even if I'm in a bus, or if I have to catch a metro, somebody does something to me, I can always, without batting an eyelid, give it back to the person. Like for instance, like you said, you've done Taekwondo. I got nothing against Taekwondo. I love the sport. And there are a few things that we picked up from Taekwondo. However, what would you do in a crowded bus in case if there's a person groping you? Right? These practicalities have to be taught to the children. Because this is a skill that they have to learn, not just to survive on the streets, but also to survive after they get married or with their boyfriends. Because most of these rapes and molestation and all these kind of things and exploitation happens behind closed doors. 95% of the time, the victim knows the perpetrator. We all know that. So, how do you know tomorrow it's not an uncle? How do you know it's not a cousin? Right? These like things.
So, have any of your students, before I ask this question, we see a lot of these, videos that have come up in the recent past. People are talking about tactical, being fight ready in tactical situation and all of that. Have any of the students actually gone through it and come out of a situation like that?
A lot of them. In fact, had it not been for COVID, I was supposed to be meeting one of the students who had bashed up 3 boys on the streets of Nainital.
Oh, wow.
Yes, there are so many of them. There are girls who called me up and they said, this uncle tried to do something to us. We hit him back. Does not mean that they slapped him. There are smart ways of doing things. If these perpetrators are very smart people. It's not that they wake up one fine day and they say, I'm going to harass my kid, and then they planning. There is the neighbor's daughter. I say something to her or I touch her in a certain manner, she'll be confused, she'll not know what to do, even if she goes and tells her parent. So the first time I touch this girl, I'm very scared. Why? Because I do not know whether my neighbor is going to come and fight with me. One day, 1 week, 10 days, when nothing happens, what is it that I do? I try doing it again. Again, when nobody comes to fight with me, that gives me the courage to take it to the next level and take it to the next level until such time that my, feelings are satisfied or my hunger is satisfied. So it is basically the silence of the victim that emboldens a perpetrator.
Right.
So this is what happens. So now, especially when it comes to an uncle or somebody, like I said, known, since these people very meticulously plan their moves, what if you were trained and the girl that I'm trying to prey upon, when I tried doing something to her very smartly, she gets out of the sticky situation and teaches me a lesson. Now,
right.
I was banking on the fact that the girl is not going to tell her parents. Now the girl is, and
Right.
now the perpetrator knows, oh, this is what happened. This is something that he was not expecting.
Right.
And this is the time when the girl should go and say, like, this happened with a student in New Zealand. There was a lady who had come to India and she wanted to work with Mission Fight Back as a counselor. And she told me about an incident that happened in New Zealand. There was this girl who kept telling her parents that there was this uncle who was harassing her again and again. And the parents just would not listen to her because these perpetrators, they make themselves so loving and they, like I said, they plan everything so meticulously. They will always try to put their best foot forward. They're the ones who are the best dressed. They're the ones who get all the right, gifts for you. They're the ones who say all the right things, the nice things to you, always well behaved. But what exactly? So it's like, wolf in a sheep's skin. So you'll feel, oh, this is the most harmless guy. So next time, in case if the child comes in, this uncle, you do not trust your own child. Right? So what I believe what this girl did, and this is a fantastic thing that this girl did. When this uncle was sitting at a party, which was thrown at their house, favorite, and she broke the first one. And the mother suddenly jumped up. She says, "Oh, that's my favorite crystal. Why did you break it?" So she broke the other one. And now the mother, she said, have you gone crazy? Have you had a drink? Why are you breaking the glasses? And she broke the third one. And she says, see, you're feeling so bad when I'm breaking crystal. You're asking me, why am I doing it? But when this uncle who keeps touching me all the time, and I keep telling you that I'm also getting the same kind of cracks. I'm shattering from inside exactly like this glass. And you people just don't listen to me. So today you value these crystal glasses because they're expensive more than my psyche, more than my body. And that's the time when I believe that man just got up and he left because he knew what was coming up next.
Right.
Right? This is what parents need to understand.
These told to us in movies, they've been told to us on videos, they've been told to us through so many different mediums. Parents know it, educators know it. Everybody knows what needs to change. But what holds us back and how can we change the mindset?
Okay, see, first and foremost is parents need to stop thinking about the society. They need to stop thinking what my neighbor has an opinion about. We have to stop worrying about judgments that people are going to pass on us. We have to start listening to our child. And even if that means that I might not have a relationship with a certain friend of mine, right? So be it. For me, my child is more important. Otherwise, I have no right to bring a child into this world in case if I cannot look after the child. Parents need to understand that, period. If you cannot look after the child, please do not increase the population of the country as it is going over the board. But having given birth to a child, it is your responsibility to look after the child. Listen to the child, whatever the child has to say. Maybe it's a story. If it's a story, find out why is it a story. If it is not a story, then you will get to know what exactly is happening with your child.
Right.
As far as the school is concerned, they have to get out of the mentality of 8 o'clock till 2 o'clock. That the school starts at 8 and it gets over at 2. And thereafter, the children are not my responsibility. You as educators, you are responsible for them actually getting into the real world. You have to train them. You have to know what's happening there. Now, in case if there is a child who comes to school the next day, maybe the child's bashed up. Maybe the child's got a scar on the face, boy or girl, whoever. How many teachers actually follow up? How many teachers actually want to have a word with the parent? Like in my own daughter's case, when my daughter was slapped in the school, there was a maths teacher who saw this thing happen. He just turned around inside the library because it says, it's not my problem. She's not even my student. What if that man would have gone there and caught this guy by the collar and said, how did you hit her? Why did you hit her? Maybe I would have known about this incident that happened with my daughter much, So each one of us has to be responsible. As parents, we have to understand what our responsibilities is. As teachers, we have to understand, what our responsibilities towards our students are. You're the gurus at the end of the day. And if you're the gurus, how can you not teach them? The other thing, it's not just your job to teach them mathematics and physics and make sure that your school result comes to 99%. The child could be getting 99%, but the child is psychologically scarred.
Right.
What have you achieved?
Right.
Your child, you can keep talking about 2 students from your school going to an IIT. But then the student jumps down from, IIT is also having so many suicide cases. Because the child was probably mentally weak. Or maybe the child was sexually abused. I'm not talking about IIT, institute, any institute. But if you ever get to hear that a child has done something like this, you are also partially to be blamed as teachers. Schools as an institutions are also to be blamed because schools as institutions are looking at what?
Right.
The fees, right? They're looking at getting more and more students each. So it's the revenue. Please go ahead and look after the revenue because you are there as an education body. You will be making money and then you have lots of expenses, but not at the expense of the child's psyche. You should feel tomorrow, there are a few schools that I've been to, and these are village schools, where they say that we want students to go out as better human beings. What they do in life is their destiny. So, like, again, coming back to this thing, the schools will always try to help the perpetrator because it shows their own shortcomings. Like a couple of years back, there was this huge chain of school where a boy was murdered because the senior student wanted exams to be postponed. So he knifed the child. I think this happened in Gurgaon. But the school tried to hide every evidence. They tried to blame the security guard. They tried to blame the watchman and so on and so forth. They look for easy scapegoats. Out of that mentality, a child has come to your school. is paying fees does not mean that his, your role ends up from time to time. You are responsible for taking the child, right, holding his hand right from the first standard all the way, till the time he can become something in life. In the foreign countries, in case if a child gets hit or this thing, the parents get called and then the police gets called. So the responsibility has to be shared at each level: schools level, teachers level, individually, parents level, every level.
Where does this change begin? Do we need to start training educators? Do we need to start? Where do we begin? Where do we start this change? Because I think everyone is aware that these things are happening. This is a reality of it. We cannot run away from what is real. But still, there seems to be no action. So where do we begin?
See, it has to begin in schools. It has to begin in schools. A lot of parents would be educated. A lot of parents will not be educated. A lot of parents who are educated were not educated the way you are educating the children now. There was a time when fathers would not talk to the sons. Fathers were always supposed to be, that man who gets bread on the table, but he stays away, does not hug the child. The mother's job was to love the children and, sacrifice and all that. Today, things are changing. Today, I hug my son, I kiss him, right? I kiss my daughter, I kiss my son, I hug them both. Right? So things are changing.
Right.
There is a certain level of awareness that has come in. For me, my son and my daughter are equal. Now, these parents who do not know what showing of emotion means, what listening to the children mean. When I joined the army, there was a saying called be seen but don't be heard. Right? As a second lieutenant or a lieutenant, we could be seen, but we were supposed to keep our mouth shut. Because senior officer always knew the things. Things in the army has also changed. Now you're seen and you're also heard. Because they realize that certain ideas can actually come from these youngsters. Now, schools also need to make sure that, the parents, there is some kind of an awareness program where parents should be taught to listen to the children.
Right.
Similarly, the children should be taught to speak up. If you cannot speak up to your parents, speak up to your teachers. If you cannot speak up to your teachers, speak up to your friends. But you have to speak up. You have any problem, speak up. Right. And the best is speak up to your sibling or speak up to your parents. Right. When you have such programs happening in schools, the child automatically learns that in case if there is any problem, right, they are supposed to go and report to the parents. Second awareness thing is we talk about good touch and bad touch in every school, but we do not categorically follow it. Like in your own city, Bangalore, I did a workshop before this thing, and I asked the children, okay, how many of you know good touch, bad touch? Everybody knew about it. Everybody knew the definitions as if it was coming in an exam. So I said, who can touch you? So they said father, mother, brother, sister, uncle, grandfather, grandmother, and then they told me the whole family line. Because what was told to them was, see, your parents, your siblings, and your close relatives. So what are close relatives? He does not understand. And not realizing, whoever was the counselor, not realizing that it is the uncles, it is the close family members who are actually the main perpetrators in our country. Please pick up the statistics and have a look at it. So you are actually teaching them good touch, bad touch, but your own teaching is wrong because you have half the knowledge. So the good touch and bad touch for everybody to understand is the father, the mother, the brother, the sister, and the father and the brother also only till a certain age when it comes to girls. Right? Thereafter, the mother also stops because the child is grown now. You cannot be giving a bath to a child when she turns 14 or 15. Right. Same is the case with the boys. You have to teach them what privacy means. You have to tell them, see, this is the way, somebody touches you like this. There should be no confusion. This is the place where the alarm bell goes off. Come and talk to us. What stops the parent from talking to that particular uncle who touched a child in a certain way? My child was feeling a little uncomfortable. Maybe she was wrong. But just be a little careful. I was doing this webinar probably about a week, 10 days back, or probably a little more. It was in the clubhouse, wherein one of the girls, she said, my parents are the biggest culprit. Why? Because she says, all uncles come, we are Indians, they will come and hug you. You're supposed to accept the hugs. They will even kiss you on the cheek. You're supposed to accept their kisses. Because parents feel, oh, this uncle has come, this auntie has come. They're hugging you. That means they're showing that much more love towards you. You have to understand the space of the child, whether the child is feeling comfortable, not feeling comfortable. Right? There was this child I know where a certain Guruji used to come. And everybody used to be falling on the feet of the Guruji. And the Guruji would always call this child, a male child. And, hold him, pull his cheeks, pull at his shorts, come sit next to me. And while the conversation is on, the child is sitting right next to the Guruji like this. And Guruji is only pulling his cheeks and things like that, rubbing his hair, rubbing his back. Child's not feeling comfortable. But nobody is going to say anything to the Guruji because Guruji ne shrap de diya, the problem hai. So we have so much of fear in our own minds as parents. What will the society say? What will my Guruji say? Things like that. So start from school. Let's start with an awareness program where the teachers, the students, and the parents can actually sit down and have an open house. Right? Start from there and see where it takes you.
Right. I think we're coming almost to the end of the conversation. So before we finish, can you tell us one or two things that you would love to see change, in the situation that we're in? What is something that you really want to change?
In the schools?
Schools, parents, basically society as a whole, when it comes to not just dealing with sexual abuse as such, but just keeping conversations open. So I think that is the biggest issue. We don't have that space to.
See, one of the main things that I would like to see is, you said living in a city like Bangalore. I'm staying in a city like Dehradun, which is a small city. You're in a metro city, right? But there is a similarity. In Bangalore, parents do not get time to speak to the children because they have a very busy schedule. They work from Monday till, they're on a, weekday to weekday thing. The time when they get, how much do they actually spend time? Taking the children to the mall is not the solution. Pick up a board game, play with them. Laugh with them, talk to them. So, like I said, why I said you are in Bangalore and I'm in Dehradun is because even in a city like Dehradun, parents are still not spending time. We are only making excuses. Because I want to watch Netflix and my son wants to be on PUBG or some such game. Or I want to read my newspaper, I just want to be in my own chilled out space. So I will always put the blame on the child. Oh, he's on the phone all the time. The child is also looking for his own escape routes and all that. At least half an hour, 40 minutes a day. These are the children that you gave birth to. Spend time with them so that you can talk to them and talk to them about any subject. Let there be no taboos in the subject that you talk about. What is wrong about talking sex to a teenager? It shouldn't be a taboo. Let them learn. Let them know it from you. I'm very openly saying that, and I don't mind announcing it. I've told my daughter that the day she turns 18, she's more than welcome to have her first drink with me. Right? I will never allow her to smoke. Because by the time she gets into the real world, at least I should know. If she does not want to have a drink, that's up to her. Like in my entire family, nobody has a drink or this thing, but I do take a drink. I was in the army. That's the way I was brought up. So drinking responsibly is the only thing that I can teach her. Because if I do not teach her, tomorrow she'll start lying to me. So at least she should have that support system where if she feels that, okay, I don't need to go out and drink in the pub. If I want to have a drink, I can go home and I can ask my dad. Whether she does it or not does it, but at least she has it at the back of her mind that my father is there. This is what, it's not a novelty for me. Most of the time, these things happen because of the novelty of things. So I think if we can just start from this change, that we start talking to our children, start playing board games with the children, start listening to them, or just talking to them, anything and everything. You'll find that their relationship gets better, and you'll find that you will actually enjoy parenting.
Okay, so coming back to street survival skills. Yeah, to close, to summarize and finish our talk today, are there any quick tips that you can give people who are watching? Like you taught me about my hair today, which is, I mean, it's something that actually I think about it now. I've never been in such a situation, but if I am, then today I at least know what to start with. So are there any such tips that you can give? Maybe girls are watching, boys are watching.
See, the tip I can give you is, please remember the perpetrator is just as scared as you are. So when somebody attacks you, he is also just as scared. For you, you'll be scared. So that is the reason you get confused. See, how to fight, how not to fight. Probably I can do a live demonstration in one of the next sessions that we do together. But right now, since I do not have the demonstrative space, all I can say is, it all starts here. The fight is here. The fight is here. The fight is here. You have to have your 5 senses, 6 senses working. Somebody tries to grope you in the bus. What if you just caught his hand? Not necessarily with a very tight grip, as long as you caught his hand and not let him have his way, and just turn around and just shout on his face. Not get into a scuffle, just shout. That is going to put a fear into that man, because he is not used to being shouted back. What he is used to is that he tries to touch a girl, she will always try to move forward. Then he'll come forward. So he will keep harassing you because you are letting yourself be harassed. And these people, they come with a certain pre-notion. They have set answers. This is what I'm going to say. This is not what I'm going to say. Right? So if the girl says, you tried to touch me, he said, no, it was a push that came, or there was a sudden break, and thing like that. So basically, if you want to protect yourself, if you want to learn street survival, you have to start here. The fight is here. Clear this. Understand one thing very clearly. This is your body. Only you have a right on your body. Nobody can touch it. Nobody can harass it. Nobody can exploit it. The day you understand this thing, the fight is yours. You've already won.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope we can do, maybe a demonstration, like you said. That is something I would love to see. We can plan that, and that is definitely something that will be useful for our, our audience as well. So the last thing is, how do you think a platform like Hoopsters can help bring about this change?
See, Hoopsters as it is doing a fantastic job of creating awareness, like I said, online awareness. And I'm sure you guys are on to offline also. And once the pandemic ends, there would be a lot of offline thing that you would be concentrating on. But I think you guys are already on the first step of creating awareness. Now, today we've spoken about a particular subject, which is street survival. The number of parents or the number of students who hear about it, that is going to generate a kind of conversation. So I think Hoopsters, if you can just generate a conversation itself, is the battle won. And then let the experts come and give you the solutions or the answers to it. Let there be an awareness that starts at the schools. Let there be directors and principals listen to you because of the reach that you already have. If you can do that, I think your services are done.
Thank you so much, sir. Such a pleasure talking to you. I think what we spoke about today was a very, very important subject, and I hope people who are watching learn a little bit about how to deal with the situations, or how to train their girls and their boys to actually go out there and survive. Mr. Bala, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I think I would just like to thank Rohit. I think it was brilliant. And yeah, we'll do a lot of things together, and let's plan something so we actually bring about the change. I think it's time to bring about the change. That's the whole story.